As the head of operations, you are in charge of production planning. To produce products, you would need to determine the suppliers from whom you would like to procure the raw materials from, manage the capacity of your plant and machinery that you currently have, determine the warehouses that you would like to store your products, and more importantly, understand the packaging materials that you would like to use for your product. The decision console distinctly comprises of three sections. The section on top is where you record the decisions. The section on bottom comprises of the references and the snapshots. References are nothing but the set of choices the player has which would help him aid in making decisions. And snapshots are more importantly the impact of the decisions taken by the player. In order to understand the impact of decisions, players would look at the various snapshots to understand the quality of the decisions taken. Let us now quickly look at an example of how a decision is taken to produce products. Once the team has decided on the product that you would like to produce based on the strategic plan, the head of operations would need to select the products from the product section on the top of the decision console. Having selected the product, the details of the product inventory which is currently available would get displayed, and details of the number of products that the players decided to produce in the previous year along with the balance that needs to be produced is available for the player to make his decisions. The section on product details gives you a sense of the ratio of raw materials required to produce a single unit of product. For example, if a player wants to produce Kisan Micra, he would need the raw materials in the ratio of 2:0:1:1. It is always a good practice to actually check the reference in order to understand the overall raw material inventory and the product inventory which are currently available before making the production request. Having selected the product and determined the number of units that you would like to produce, you would now need to select the supplier from whom you would need to procure your raw materials from. Suppliers are vendors whom you would transact with in order to procure the raw materials. If you take a look at the reference section, you would understand that there are different suppliers who would currently supply the raw materials that you would require to produce your products. And you would also have the details on the capacity, the rate in which they would like to supply, and more importantly, the quality and the time that they would take to supply your raw materials. You would need to take cognizance of the quality rating and the time because these are important factors which would determine the time it takes for the products to produce and the number of products that get produced once the production request is made. Go ahead and then place your order and enter the number of units of raw materials that you would like to produce from your suppliers. The section on raw material details gives you information on the inventory which is currently available. Reserved gives you an indication of the number of raw materials which are currently being used for production. Required gives you information of the number of raw materials that you would currently need to procure from your suppliers. Balance gives you an indication of what is currently available in your inventory minus what is required. So you would need to enter the number of raw materials equal to the balance that's currently displayed on your screen. However, you have an option to order for more raw materials from your suppliers, considering the fact that you would need them for future production. Please bear in mind that every time you make a production request, you would need to procure raw materials, and it would take a certain amount of time for the raw materials to get supplied and then move into your raw material inventory, and only after which the production request could get started. For example, if you procure raw materials from TPK Corp, who has the highest quality, he would take about 9 moves for them to supply the raw materials, which means to say that if you start the production request on your first move, the raw materials get added to your raw material inventory on the 9th move, and post which your actual production of your products gets started. So you would need to plan much in advance for you to ensure that you have enough products for your marketing team to sell them. So let's order excess of raw materials from the suppliers in order to ensure that they are available for future production request. You now need to make a purchase request and determine the suppliers from whom you would like to purchase the raw materials from. And the suppliers have constraints in the overall capacity that they have. The capacity is common to both the teams, so which means to say that if one of the teams are ordering more from a particular supplier, the other teams would have a lesser amount of capacity from which they could choose from. So in order to understand the overall supplier available capacity, please click on the help menu icon on top for you to understand the capacity of the suppliers. You would get to look at the available percentage and you could determine the suppliers from whom you would like to procure from. Having determined the suppliers from whom you would like to procure the raw materials from, the third most important decision that the player needs to take is to determine the plant in which they would like to produce the products from. In the beginning of the game, the teams have commissioned the Northtown plant, and as the game progresses, the teams would be in a position to augment their capacity by installing more plants and machinery. The details of the plant and machinery are available in the reference section below, and the teams would need to take cognizance of the information provided in order to make an informed decision. The section on overall capacity provides information on the total capacity of the plant. For example, the Northtown plant has a capacity of about 1,35,000 units, in which they would be in a position to install various machines which are having a different capacity, and also the information on the total count of machines that could be installed in each of the plant is provided. For example, in Northtown plant, one would be in a position to install only about 8 supersonic machines, each having a capacity of about 9,000 units. The teams also could look at their current capacity in order to understand the currently available capacity to them and the utilization percentage as they start producing more products. The information on cost and time provides the details of the time it takes to commission a plant and the overall cost the team would need to incur in order to commission a plant. The teams also wouldn't be in a position to install more plants by clicking on the buy plant and commissioning them. Information on the machinery is crucial in order to augment the capacity. Machinery details in terms of the overall capacity, cost and time gives the players the information in order to choose which machinery that they would like to procure, and also take into consideration the overall rejection percentage and the total time it takes for the machinery to be delivered. The tab on operators provides information on the total number of operators that are required to man each of the machines. So this information is what feeds into the HR department, because they are the ones who would be recruiting people for various departments. The teams would be able to procure the plant and the machine by clicking on the buy plant and buy machine and commissioning them. And they would need to take cognizance that it would take X amount of moves for the plant and machinery to get installed and commissioned, and that varies from machine to machine and plant to plant. Having decided on the plant and machine, the players would now need to determine the warehouse in which they would like to store their products which are currently produced. The finished goods which are produced would need to be stored in warehouses, and the teams also would need to determine the packaging materials that they would like to use for each of the products. The information about warehouses and the packaging materials are available in the reference section, and similar like to plant and machine, the teams would be in a position to buy more warehouses in order to store all the finished goods and raw materials which are currently being produced and made available to them. Information on packaging materials gives the overall capacity and the quality and the cost of each of the packaging materials. And having determined the packaging materials and the warehouse, the teams would be in a position to actually review the decisions taken, and they would be in a position to initiate the production request. Once you've made your decision, I'm sure you would be interested in knowing the impact of the decision that you've taken. Snapshots is where you've got to look at to understand the impact of the decisions and the quality of the decisions you've taken, because they provide you an instantaneous feedback. The section on production efficiency gives you the overall efficiency of your previous production request for the entire quarter. For example, if you decided to produce about 1,000 units of products, and if your production efficiency is 50%, then only 500 units would get produced. This has a huge implication, not only in terms of your plan, but even to the marketing team, because they would not be in a position to make revenue. The section on unit cost gives you the total cost of each of your products. And you would need to minimize these costs in order to achieve greater amount of product profitability. Now that you have learned how to initiate a production request, I'm sure you would be in a position to produce more products and move them into inventory. Please bear in mind that production is a continuous process. In order to achieve greater economies of scale and to meet your stated objective and strategic plan, you would need to continuously produce. Just initiating one production request would only tantamount to producing a few number of products with a higher unit cost impacting your overall profitability. So you, as the production head, would need to continuously produce products and manage your budgets in order to achieve your stated plan. I'm sure you have learned how to initiate production request now, and all the very best.